Hi, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Maverick Moses. I am the author of the upcoming YA Dark Urban Fantasy trilogy, Karma's Children, co-host of the Book Fiends Club, and I'm joined here by my co-hosts, Don Kurtagich and Marie Ventris. Unfortunately, our fourth member, Cass from the Bookish Crypt, was not able to make it, but maybe she'll be like in the live chat with you guys a little bit. We'll see. But before we go into talking about our past books of the month, so last month we didn't end up having a live chat. Our schedules just could not mesh whatsoever. So we missed out on doing our live chat of The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. And so we're going to be talking about that, as well as talking about Within These Walls by Ania Ahlborn. So before we go right into those chats, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves for everybody. Dawn, would you like to start?
Sure. My name's Dawn Kurtagich. I'm here in the UK, so getting our international book group together at the same time was a bit challenging last month, but we managed it this month. I'm the author of Teeth in the Mist, which is behind me. It comes out on the 11th of June. I can't believe it. It's so soon. And it is a gothic horror fantasy set where I live in North Wales. Now that's me.
Awesome. I cannot wait for Teeth in the Mist. So excited. And also, y'all, so she mentioned that she's over in the UK, and Google lied to us about the time zone. When we were scheduling this live right here, we agreed that it would be 12:30 her time. And so I, worked backwards or whatever with the math based on what Google had said. And then came time to it, and she was like, wait, aren't we going on now? And I was like, wait, no, in another hour. And yeah.
It was so bad. It's actually my fault.
Google
no, it's
mixed us up.
My fault because we entered summertime, so I'm actually GMT +1 now. And I so Google, you were completely fine.
Well, why does it have to be +1? Like, why can't it just stay GMT?
I know. I don't even ask me. I don't know how these things work. When I grew up in South Africa, I never had to change time. So I've only been dealing with this since I was like 12. So long enough.
Marie, would you like to go next? Okay. Now that brief intermission is done.
I am Marie Ventris. I write horror, sci-fi, supernatural stuff. I've published 3 books. The most recent one was Castle and Coyote, which is just kind of an entertaining little, I don't know how to describe it, urban fantasy kind of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just kind of write whatever, so just across the spectrum. And that's me.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to go into talking about our first book, which was The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. So before we go into the more spoilery parts, what were y'all's initial reactions to it? Like, what kind of expectations did you have from it, or predictions that you had before you started reading?
I'll let Marie go first because I always say way too much. I think I'm just going to follow that general.
You foster the conversation more, though.
You do.
I can go first. I didn't have any expectations going in because I haven't actually read Frankenstein. I know. I thought I was going to read it last year because I went to a writing retreat in Geneva, of all places. It would have been so perfect to read Frankenstein then, but I didn't get a chance. I was too busy writing. So I actually had no expectations going in. I vaguely know some of the Frankenstein story, but I think that I probably missed a lot of Easter eggs and clues and clever tricks that the author played in this book. But I just went in with a completely blank slate.
Yeah, I'm kind of semi with you there. I feel like, Marie, you probably have read or more familiar with actual Frankenstein. But I read it years ago in high school for literature class or whatever, but I haven't read it since, and I don't really remember a whole lot of things about it. And I meant to read it before I started reading The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and I didn't get around to it. But in general, I just was kind of going in with like an open mind. I knew like the general plot of Frankenstein, like what Frankenstein is, and I really enjoyed seeing kind of how it was taking a turn on Elizabeth Frankenstein versus like just talking about Victor. So I like that.
I was all for that female retelling thing. I'm like, yeah, girl power. So that was exciting. But I didn't know what role she would play because I really don't know the story of Frankenstein. So I was like, oh, what is this? Is she going to be a sister, his wife? I don't know.
Yeah, Marie?
Well, yes, I have read Frankenstein a lot. I'm
Yeah.
incredibly obsessed with Frankenstein. And so I didn't know what expectations to have going into this because I'd never read Kiersten White before. So I didn't know if I was going to read like almost like a self-insert fan fiction or something, you know, or if it was going to be this artful gothic tale like people said. And I was really hoping to see some Frankenstein Easter egg kind of stuff in there, you know, that it would follow a similar plot line, which of course it did. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it, given that you know Frankenstein so well.
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to be our go-to for does this line up with the book?
Well, what else was cool was that I had the ebook copy of it because it's really the only way I can read anything. And it actually came with Frankenstein too. So I thought that this book was super long because I'm watching the progress bar, you know. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be halfway through this book. And then it ends and there's, you know, like the author's note and stuff. And then Frankenstein starts. And I was like, oh.
That is so cool. Yeah, you finished it really fast. I remember we messaged and you were like, yeah, I've read it, and we hadn't even started it.
I just read really fast.
Teach me how. I can't read fast. I very rarely can. I know.
Yeah. Audiobooks are kind of helping, but for the most part, even though like I can only, you know, listen to them when I'm like driving from like my home to like Starbucks, which is where I work. Well, not like work, but like type work. And that's only like 5 minutes away from my house. So just imagine that like 10 minutes a day, like. But
amazing how much it adds up, you know. And if you listen to it 2 times speed, then you can really get some words in. It sounds weird at first, but you get used to it.
I think I listened to them like at like 1.5. I think I've tried to, and it just sounds like gibberish. Anyway, going into talking more about The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, what did you guys think about each of these characters? So let's just go ahead and start right in with Elizabeth, the main character.
I'll go first this time, only because I think that Marie's going to have so much more to say, given that she's read the original, you know, Frankenstein. I really enjoyed her. I thought her character and emotional arc was so clever. I loved how she was just this little vicious like fox that would do anything to stay in the house. And it's almost like there was this weird thing going on with her and Victor where, you know, she is Victor's monster in the beginning because she'd do anything for him and she protects him and she's just so vicious. But then he's also her monster because she's enabled these behaviors. So I thought that was a really cool dynamic. And then, are we doing like a spoilery chat?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, and then in the end, when she realizes what she's helped to unleash and the change in her and the way she falls in love with Justine, her best friend, and I just loved her character arc. It was really realistic, and I felt like it was a real coming of age story, and I don't always have that feeling about young adult novels, so I really liked her.
Awesome. I really liked her too. I think I like kind of related to her in a way in that she was like so fake every bit. And like that's kind of me. Not with like you guys or whatever, but in a lot of different situations, like especially when I used to work at a restaurant, I was, you know, fake 100% of the time. Like even like my coworkers and stuff, I would be like friendly with them, even though I like secretly hated them.
Yeah.
And so just like her like mentality of like being like this like strong person on the inside, but on the outside she is like you know, doing what she feels is the best for her, while manipulating and going at beating around the bush and playing on everybody else's emotions without them realizing it, which is what I really enjoyed. Marie?
Sorry, I just like
What happened?
you're done.
Oh, you're good.
We're just talking about Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I love are we doing spoilery stuff? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier.
I was like, are we
Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Go ahead and.
I love how much she fleshed her out and made her into an actual character. It feels like what Mary Shelley would have preferred to write, honestly. You know, just the way she only had the only tools that she was able to use in this, you know, male-dominated world, basically, were, you know, manipulation and playing the role that she was supposed to play, and that she had to rely so much on convincing everyone else that she was this person that they needed. She has had so much depth because, you know, even she knew that wasn't really her. Just the codependent relationship between her and Victor was written so well as toxic relationship, and I really, really loved it. This is like does her justice after all these years, you know.
I love that. I love that idea that Mary Shelley's like, oh, finally, you know.
Yeah.
I did get a sense of fear, genuine fear, because I was like, what would I do in that situation?
Yeah.
Would I have been brave enough to go alone into Geneva with my friend, 2 women, with no power, no plan? I'd like to think I would, but honestly, probably not, you know?
Yeah, which shows how desperate she was, you know?
Yeah, and the desperation of her plight was so interesting. And it took ages for Victor to be like, no, you're mine. And when that finally happens, you should be like, oh, phew, but you're actually like, oh, shit. What does that mean now? Careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a question on the Book Fiends Instagram page from Isabel that she asked, was Elizabeth's descent what you expected, or did you find the title deceiving? So she said that at first I thought her descent would make her the villain of the story. What did you guys think?
I think she was the villain of the story a little bit until the reveal later, which we were all expecting, because we can see Victor's behaviors throughout the book, like, you know, killing the bird and whatever. That wasn't explicitly revealed until later, but I kind of guessed. So we knew that this reveal was coming, and yet I was still surprised by the villainy in Victor. But until that point, I really thought she was the villain of the story, because she was enabling a psychopath to do all these things. And then when we realized that Victor was willing to even kill his brother to get this power and to cheat death, she enabled that. So she's a victim villain. It's so clever. I will say that, so clever.
I do like your spin on that, like the victim villain. I just associated her as like that kind of behind the scenes like objective person almost. Like she's just doing everything for the best of her, not necessarily when she covers up you know, Victor killing the bird, or Victor cutting his brother or whatever. She does it not for the sake of Victor, she does it for the sake of herself, because if something happens to Victor, something happens to her.
Exactly. Self-preservation, isn't it? So like, if you can imagine being so desperate, would you do any less?
Exactly.
You know, it's such an interesting question, and she was such a complicated character for that reason. But she still enabled a psychopath who then went on to kill like Henry and all these things.
Yeah. So like in like relation to the question of like whether I thought that the title was deceiving. So when I was starting to read it, I initially thought like the dark descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein is like, yeah, she's like in the moment, I thought that it was going to become something where she actually turns into that villain side of things, but not necessarily to be the villain, but to kill the villain, if that makes sense. So I thought she would get to a point towards the end of the book where all of this stuff has been bottling up on her, and she's getting darker and darker into this descent, but in that descent, she finally snaps and kills Victor. But in the end, she didn't even have the guts to. She saw it in front of him and couldn't do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought one of two things. I thought either it's going to be her becoming more and more desperate, which it is. But the other thing that I thought would happen with that was that there would be a kind of Penny Dreadful-esque element to it, and maybe she would end up being a secondary Frankenstein's monster. So I thought that that would be the descent. Like she would descend into being one of his projects. So, but I'm glad that didn't happen, because I didn't expect what happened. I actually can't remember exactly how it ended now. I remember being like, oh yeah, okay, where's the book? I need to flip through.
Well, towards the end of the scene or whatever, they're at the house, and Victor is about to raise his dad from the dead that he just killed and become another monster. And then Elizabeth succeeds in stopping him, but then he I think he runs away, right? And then they burn down the lab and the house, and then they go on the run.
Yeah, but she was brave enough to let go of him and let him drown.
Was she though? Because that wasn't necessarily her. She was kind of bringing him in with her.
She was going to sacrifice herself to end him, though.
Exactly.
Like a huge redemption arc.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it is a redemption arc, but it also makes me think, really? The woman had to sacrifice herself again? But that's just the cynicism in me.
Well, it's because she was throughout the whole book, she was the ultimate survivor. You know,
yeah.
All the lace and stuff, she was just an animal, clawing at her last lifeline. And so to give up that one thing that she's been scrabbling desperately for the whole book, I think shows a huge character growth, because she saw the greater picture and not just herself, and realized this guy's got to die because he's just gonna keep killing people.
True.
And
yeah, she'd also lost everyone that she loved. Everyone was dead, so what was there really to claim or live for?
Well, she had
the Mary and Adam.
Yeah,
that's true.
Your family.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess it is redemptive.
But in the end, like Murray was saying, she didn't necessarily choose I have to kill Victor or whatever. She was I'm going to take him down with me.
Yeah.
If I die, he dies. Was my mindset.
Strength or something, and then just let him go. I can't remember.
Well, Adam pulled her out. That's what I remember, right?
No. Hang on.
I thought one of them pulled her out.
Mary pulled her out.
Mary pulled her out. One of them pulled her out. Because I remember it was the end or whatever, and then it had an extra little chapter, and I was like, that can't be how it ends. And then sure enough, where was it? Oh yeah. So I loved how the formatting or whatever was that she's the very last sentence is, and then alone but not scared, I closed my eyes she was ready to die. And then it has black pages, at least on my formatted of the book. It has black pages, and I was like, that can't be how it ends. And then it has an epilogue where it goes.
Wow, I totally missed the epilogue. Oh. But there is a revealing sentence here about the fact that it's not a redemptive thing that she does, because it says, if I lived, I would still die, and I would never have control of myself again. So it's still a selfish action. It's not redemptive at all. She's still being selfish.
Yeah. And then
So
even
he's
that last
like,
sentence, she
if I
says,
live,
and then alone but not scared, I closed my
yeah,
eyes. So even in that moment, she still didn't feel like she was like part of something bigger.
yeah.
Like
So
we've been
I
talking
don't
about, like she's found her, like she has her found family with Mary and Adam, but even in that last sentence, it kind of speaks to the fact that she doesn't totally see it like that. She's still on
yeah,
her own.
still, that's so interesting to me because I think that she's still acting out of self-preservation, and she takes Victor with her, maybe because she feels like in a way he's her monster. Maybe, I'm not sure of their motivations, but that line just proved to me anyway that she has better she's making better decisions, but she's self-motivated still,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Sorry, I'm just reading the last epilogue.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't, like, I think I always like reading the acknowledgments at the end of the book. So when the book ended, I was like, well, now I read the acknowledgments, and then saw that there was an epilogue, and I was like, thank God. Like, that's not how it
I'm
ended.
actually sad. I love a bittersweet ending, so I'm kind of sad that she was pulled out and she lived. I guess that's for more optimistic non-horror writers. I'm really sad she didn't just die.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed emotions about like main characters dying. I write in my books, main characters die. And for the most part,
Spoiler.
I can enjoy the fact that someone has the guts to kill a main character. But it still doesn't make it easier. Like I can appreciate it, but it doesn't make it easier.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. I just think that she was such an I don't know, because I view her as villain and victim. If she had lived well, I know she does now, but if she'd lived, it would have been like, okay, she's triumphed. If she died, it would have been like, okay, the villain dies, but then also the victim dies, and that's not fulfilling enough. So I suppose the epilogue was fitting now that I've read it.
Well, I think maybe probably a more satisfying epilogue would have been if, yeah, she did die, but now Mary and Adam are like fulfilling her desires or wishes or something like that. Like, I think that would have been really cool to see.
Yeah.
Because Mary did just like kind of like leave to, I don't know, grocery shopping or something. I don't remember what she was doing. And then Adam was, traipsing around all over the place, hiding from people. But I think it would have been cool just to see like what happened with Mary and Adam, and like if they found her or something.
And I mean, kudos to Kiersten White, because after such a complicated character-driven story, it's really difficult to end the story. But again, I've not read the original, so what happens in the original? Does she die? How does it go?
Yeah, she dies. She gets killed by the monster on her wedding night, which just motivates Victor and lets him see, what an actual monster he's created. And now he's
okay, I like the twist then. I like the twist that she, with that information, I love the flipping on its head.
Yeah, and I like how they essentially she like Kiersten White almost like extended the storyline, because that was like a plot point or whatever, that the monster was going to kill her like on their wedding night. And so she had like planned for it, and she had like prepared and everything for being able to kill the monster on her wedding night, and then it never happened. And then in the end, the monster was truly revealed, but it was Victor who was the monster, which I thought was like a really cool play on
within that
whole aspect.
I really wish I had read Frankenstein first, because within that context, I can see that I read the book with like a 10% in severe enjoyment of what I could have done if I had read Frankenstein. I want to hear more from Marie though. I want to hear how it was for you reading the book in relation to having read the original, and how the characters were the same or different or extended.
They were expanded upon a lot. Even like Justine was expanded upon a lot. It was really cool seeing, now that someone has the freedom to write all of the characters as three-dimensional people and not just the dudes, it really enriched the story for me as a woman, and someone who's read Frankenstein a lot, and I've dissected it, for classes and stuff, and I've always wondered what Mary Shelley would have written if she had the freedom to actually, because she had two guys overseeing what she was doing, and making edits and suggestions the whole way. And she had to run it past them before it even became published. And just makes me wonder, what did her original look like and what would she have heard? And I feel like it would be something like this, because it has a very similar message, that Victor is actually the monster. But it just is it's a more compelling story. Maybe just because Frankenstein, the original, is so old and we've all read it and it's become, kind of tropish at this point.
Almost all of us.
Yeah.
I think reading Frankenstein now will be interesting for me because I'm coming from the reverse perspective.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, now you can read Frankenstein while picturing Victor as the unreliable narrator that he kind of because it's him telling his story, and it's like when they found his journal in this book and how he's making it seem like, it's like you're reading that version, his little like rose-colored.
I'm excited for that. That's gonna be
that sounds cool.
I might read it and do like a tiny analysis, given that I read these two backwards.
That would be cool.
Yeah. What about the other male characters? Because we didn't see that much of like Judge Frankenstein. In the beginning, he was just this cold, aloof man, and then you think he's warm towards her, and then he becomes a dickhead anyway. What was he like in the original?
God, he was pretty much the hard ass that he is in this one. I don't think he's quite as manipulative. I barely remember him in the original. And it's been like 2 months since I read it, so
he wasn't that really compelling.
No, I think he was filled out a bit more in this one as far as his faking emotional manipulation kind of stuff.
That's one thing that Kiersten White did really well. She would bring something in, then turn it on its head, and then turn it on its head again, especially with the relationship between Elizabeth and the judge. There were 3 distinct, or like 4 distinct phases. First it was like indifference, then it was, oh, you're a burden, then it was, oh, I care for you so much, and then it was, oh, I only care for you because of this money you'll bring. And that happened through everybody's arc. It literally was, something would happen and then she'd flip it around, and then that would carry on, and then she'd flip that around. It was so clever.
It really was.
Why do we bother writing? Such amateurs.
I
know. I'd love to sit with Kiersten and have a conversation with her about the research that she did, and the spark of the idea and the process it must have been to write this book.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. I'm so in love with it. I'm gonna read it like 3 times every year now. Really,
yeah, I very much enjoyed it. Yeah, I would give it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and the only reason I gave it 4.5 instead of 5 stars is because I struggled to get into it a little bit in the beginning, and for my 5-star reads, I never have that problem.
Same. I gave it 4 stars because it took a little while for it to like start developing into the fast pace that it became like halfway through. But and like you said, 5-star reads for me is very much like has to hold my attention the entire time.
Yeah, but the thing is, if I had read the original, it might have changed to 5-star because I might have known the ways that she was setting up this world as opposed to the original. And that's another reason I think my experience of it was slightly diminished because I hadn't read the original. So I'm sure I missed a lot of cool trickery and skill when it comes to the book in relation to the original.
It's awesome. She must have had like a chalkboard wall or something with just like both timelines running along it so she could interweave things from the original. It was masterful. You really have to be.
Is it a 5-star read for you then?
Yeah, it is. I have no trouble again if the prose hooks me and if the characters kind of hook me. I don't mind slower beginnings to books because I kind of enjoy the potboiler style, where it takes a little while to build up.
See, I do as well, and I think that it might not have felt so long if I'd read the original, because
if you read the original, you would know like where they're going next and what they're doing and where he actually is.
Exactly. So, and for me, it was like, oh, okay, it's the Dark Descent. When does that start? So again, this book should come with a disclaimer: read Frankenstein first. Although probably the entire world has read Frankenstein, and I'm the last human on the planet who hasn't. So fair play to that.
What did you guys think about the whole like flashbacks thing? Now, Marie, I don't know, was Frankenstein written in flashbacks too? I don't remember that being.
No, it's written more like a journal where he's detailing what's going on, and sometimes he talks about past events, but it's not written in the same style like that. I kind of liked it because it allowed it to show the things that he maybe mentioned in passing, and you're like, well, there's a new light shown on that particular incident. It just fills in a lot of gaps that were left.
I liked it. I mean, the way you felt like you were in the scene living it with her, but then the way she withheld information about, as though she's protecting Victor, she doesn't want to talk about some of the specifics, and it was like, oh, you're keeping secrets from me now, I can't wait to like give them to me.
That's true. And then she starts to like reveal more as it goes on. She's more willing to look at the reality of it, which
plays into her character arc, because if she had revealed that early on, she wouldn't have had the arc she did. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, Kiersten White, top author for me. She's like an author buy now for me.
Yeah.
All right. Who have we not really talked about? We haven't really talked about Henry much. Like some of the more like side characters, like Henry and Mary, and like Adam.
Again, I don't know the role that Henry had, or Adam had, or Justine had in the original. I love Justine as a moral compass to Elizabeth, but she was almost a little bit saccharine for me, just a little bit too pure, and I was like, yeah, she's gonna die. And then she did. But I was surprised. I'm surprised she just kind of gave up, but I think it's supposed to be a contrast between her and Elizabeth. So I really found that interesting. And I like the touch of softness there with Justine.
What, Marie? Preface us with some of their backstories in the actual Frankenstein.
Hold on, I'm going through my notes on my Kindle because
okay.
I was sleep deprived when I wrote it, so all over the place.
No problem. What did you guys think about Adam becoming? Again, like I don't really remember Frankenstein as much, but Adam becoming like a hero figure versus the monster.
That was cool. I mean, in terms of Henry being the monster, that was just very obvious to me. But I
think that's funny. I thought that caught me by surprise.
Really? No,
Henry is the monster.
When no one could find him, I was like, he's the monster, man. But what I didn't expect is that Henry would be hanging around Elizabeth because he felt something, because he causally remembered something. I thought that was surprising and cool. I liked that he wasn't just Henry as a monster. I like that he was a whole new person, like a whole new creature. And it made me sad. It was a very bittersweet, like ouchy moment for me, because I felt so sad for him. He lost everything, and then he's just this new baby in the world that's going to treat him so badly. Oh, it made me sad.
Marie, are you caught up yet?
No, I'm sorry. I made a
You're
lot.
fine. You're fine.
And some of them are just nonsense.
For the most part, like, this is where, like, I'm like really bummed that we didn't get to do this chat a month ago, because I probably would have a lot more opinions, but I just like
Can't
am
remember.
blinking on a lot of things.
Oh, don't worry, I got everybody.
But let's just go into final thoughts then. So we said, Dawn, you said you give it like 4.5 stars.
Yeah, I think
does that change after this chat, or?
I think it will definitely change after I read Frankenstein, because I will pick up on those nuances, those really careful. What I can say is that from a writing point of view, it was crisp, beautiful, gothic writing and atmosphere. And I can tell, even though I haven't read the original, that this book was lovingly crafted. I really do think it's a masterpiece, and I'm so curious to see what I think in hindsight after I've read Frankenstein, and it's giving me a kick up the butt to read Frankenstein soon. But it's one of those books you could definitely study. I think you could break it down in classes and compare the original and compare the two novels and have so much to say, and you can learn so much from it. So I mean, absolutely bravo, really good.
Yeah, I'd have to probably say the same. As I said, original thought was 4 stars because of how it started out a little bit slow. But I do think if I go back and read Frankenstein and I start getting into the more different like details and nuances of that story and connect it with this, then that will probably change too.
We could totally do a chat of the people who read it backwards and see.
Let's do it, Dawn.
Frankenstein hasn't read this book, or has read this book. We can all like go away and shamefully read Frankenstein late, and then come back and have another chat.
Yeah. So Book Fiends watching. If you haven't read Frankenstein yet, go back.
Absolutely.
Maybe that'll be a little bonus video for you guys.
Yeah, extra content.
Let's see, I'm reading some of the comments here. Walani says, I liked the ending before the epilogue and actually wish it had ended there. Yeah, so we had talked about that earlier.
I agree. Yeah. You're on my wavelength. I'm so glad, because I felt like I was in a minority there and like I'm just an evil-minded person, but apparently not.
You're a horror author. It's okay.
I am. I love a very complicated ending.
Like, I am technically a dark fantasy author. So like mine still has a bit of hope in them versus pure horror.
Abandon hope, ye who enter here, says my novels on the front cover.
Let's see. Walani says, I love Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is why I tried reading this. So she has read it. Maybe I'm biased because of that. Although you did give it, I'm curious, you gave it 3 stars for like Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. He gave it 3 stars. But you have read Frankenstein, so I'm curious, like, what kind of differing opinions you had with that, because Marie liked it because of the way that it like connected in that way, and then she gave Elizabeth Frankenstein 5 stars because of that. So I'm curious. Let me know in the comments there.
I do think also that the Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein appeals to a certain kind of reader because it is gothic fiction, and I love gothic fiction. I'm a very big fan of atmosphere and that whole toil and trouble kind of growing tension, but not everyone does like that. So was that a factor, or was it just because you felt more loyal to the original? Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry.
Bless you.
Oh, we have a pollen bomb here in the UK, so like I've got really bad hay fever, and I've never had hay fever, so this is very new and interesting.
You smell like a kitten.
Oh, thanks.
I think I'm having residual allergies from something that happened last night because I went to go see a movie, and there was a girl sitting next to me who like brought a blanket from home, and it literally smelled like wet dog. So I'm like, guarantee you she brought that from her home, and like a dog has laid on it, and I'm allergic to dogs, so there was probably like some dander or whatever on there that got on me, and like I was just sneezing by the end of the movie. Like it was bad.
Just like me. I was like, wow, I'm not the only one sniffing on this video. By the way, just brief segue. Did you guys see Endgame?
Did we see what?
Endgame.
No, not yet. I'm seeing it Wednesday.
Okay, I'm not saying anything.
Do you guys watch Game of Thrones? That's another big thing.
Oh my god, yeah. Don't tell me I haven't seen episode 3 yet. It airs on here in the UK, and I have to go to my mom's house to watch it, and she wasn't feeling very good today, so I haven't seen episode 3.
Yeah, I haven't either. I haven't even seen episode 2.
Oh my god,
I was busy last week, and then this week was busy again. So
the whole Aria thing, you have to see it.
Whatever. I'm one of those people that enjoys watching it, but I'm not like religious about it, if that makes sense.
Oh, like, I love it. Oh, I love it. I'm just like, Game of Thrones! Shush! Everyone shut up!
Did you read the Game of Thrones books?
No. Oh, I'm very ashamed to say no, but I do plan to, or at least the audiobooks. But I just couldn't wait. I love the show so much.
I tried reading the first book, and it was just like so dense that I couldn't get through it.
I had that with Outlander. I really liked the series, and I tried to read the books, and I liked it enough, but I had other books that were a higher priority, and it was like exactly following the series. So I was like, this is kind of a waste of my time. Sorry. Plus, it was written so long ago. I can tell that the style is older than I felt like it should be, given the show's voice. Have we had any more comments? Anyway. I'm so excited.
Let's see. Nope, not yet. We can go ahead and go into Within These Walls if we're done talking about Elizabeth Frankenstein. Do we have any other like final thoughts about it?
Just that it was great. Now, I have my copy of Within These Walls. See, it's proof, but the spine is all clean and the pages are all clean because I didn't get a chance to read it. Now, let me defend myself before everyone attacks me. I got an unprecedented amount of blurb requests this past month, and I haven't even finished reading all the books that I need to read to give blurbs for. So I just didn't get time to read this book, which is such a shame because
it's right up your alley.
Yeah, and I loved Brother, the other novel, and what's the other one I read? I can't remember, but I loved Brother, that one, which was amazing. And I'm so excited to get to this, and I'm sad that I don't get to chat to you guys about it. So before I leave and I let you guys discuss it, you have to promise me that we'll chat about it privately when we're not live. Okay. Well, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you guys for having me, and I'll see you next month when we discuss The Woman in the Dark?
Yeah, The Woman in the Dark. And then the month after that will be the
Asylum book.
The Asylum, yes.
And the month after that
will be Teeth in the Mist. Super excited for that. And for those of you watching, so the July book of the month will be Dawn's next novel, Teeth in the Mist. It comes out June what?
11th.
June 11th. So it comes out June 11th. So you have plenty of time to get it for us to read it in July. And our live chat at the end of July will be like talking about the book, but it'll also be like a cool like Q&A type of session with Dawn because obviously she wrote it.
If you hated the book, I won't cry on screen. I have a thick skin, so you can tell me anything you like, but then I'll go away and cry later. But if you do have any questions, I'll be here to answer them. So that's really exciting and fun. I've never had that opportunity before, so yay. Right, I gotta go. I'm filming the Teeth in the Mist book trailer tomorrow, so I gotta get
fun stuff.
So I will love you and leave you. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. And as always, I love chatting with you. I hope you have a vigorous conversation about Within These Walls and that you miss me just a little bit.
Oh, definitely.
Wow. See you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, Don. All right, y'all. So we're going to go right into talking about the April book of the month, which was Within These Walls by Ania Ahlborn. So like Don said, she wasn't able to read this. So she's going to log off for now. But you've got me and Marie talking about it. So if you read this and you have any questions about it, feel free to fire off here in the chat. But let's just talk about what our initial reactions for it were. What were your initial thoughts going into this, Marie?
I was worried at first that it was going to be just because I didn't research anything about it because I had no idea what it was going to be about. I was kind of worried it was just going to be like an occult serial killer kind of story, which could be entertaining, but it doesn't really interest me all that much because serial killers aren't that interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was delighted with the turns that it took. Supernatural.
Yeah, same here. I mean, just from the cover in itself, again, I don't remember reading a whole lot about the blurb on the back, but just looking at the cover itself, I see, this kind of creepy girl hidden behind a curtain, and my initial reaction is that it's very much involved with ghosts. But I would actually say that I thought that there would be more of a presence of ghosts than there were. Because in what we were seeing in the story is, and this is kind of going into spoilers already, but oh well. We start seeing in the spoilers or throughout the book is that these ghosts or whatever are more manifesting themselves as visions.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the characters are hallucinating, and with these changes and stuff with the house, and it's not so much of a presence of ghosts as I thought it would be based on the cover.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was a little disappointed about, but it was still a really fun read.
All that stuff though, the subtle things, were so tantalizing. I feel like it didn't pay off as much as I wanted it to after all of that because it felt like this really good buildup. But it was still I just love the tantalizing little supernatural sprinkles like that. I'm just are they losing their minds or is this really going on?
At what point did you start kind of going into okay, something very sinister is happening here?
I don't know. I don't think I made any notes on this one. I read it more slowly than normal, and then I just don't remember much about it. So I really should have taken notes. It's because I read it way too early in the month. I just read it the first week of April.
Yeah.
When it was when the daughter, what was her name?
V?
Yeah.
Victoria? Or no, Virginia?
Yeah. Virginia.
Yeah.
He started getting more convinced, and I was maybe.
You're probably going to see me trip up on names a lot because A, I'm bad with names in general, and B, the names changed constantly in this book, and it was so annoying. Yeah. When the daughter, whatever, V, she literally went by 4 different names throughout the entire book. She went by her full name was Virginia, and then her parents called her Jeannie. She went by V, and then the ghosts or whatever started calling her Vivi.
Yeah.
So I was just in a constant state of confusion. Wait, what name is this? What name is this now?
Yep.
But I did kind of in that the name, because the point of views changed from between Lucas and V, and so I did kind of how when it was V's turn to have the point of view that it called her by the name that she prefers. So it gave the distinction of what point of view we were in a specific chapter a lot easier for me because I could notice that when the narrator was calling the girl V, I knew that this was her perspective of things.
Yeah, shorthand,
which was nice.
Change.
Yeah. Okay, well, what did you think about Lucas.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really connect with any of the characters very much in this book. Like, they weren't the strong point to me. The strong point was just
the strong point was
interwove like the backstory and what was actually going on, and then finding out it was actually supernatural, and then the ending. That just kind of sold it for me. Honestly, I didn't like Lucas all that much. I didn't like his wife. I didn't really even like V. I kept forgetting that she was supposed to be like a tween or something. I kept thinking she was like 16.
Oh, same,
and then I would
same.
Be like, oh wait, no.
And then like find out, I literally thought she was a teen, like probably most of the book. And then maybe like 3/4 the way through, I saw something about, I think Lucas was on the phone with someone, or no, he was talking to that Echo girl, and she asked like, oh, how old is she? And he goes 12.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I was like, what? That doesn't make sense. Like, her maturity level for all of what was happening was truly like way above her age.
Yeah. But maybe some kids are like that. I don't know.
Well, Honey says Lucas was desperate and stupid at times. Very true.
That's accurate. Yes.
Like V was smarter than him. Like all of the characters were like kind of dumb. Like, let's face it. But of all the characters, V was actually smarter than her own dad.
That's true. Yep.
And I didn't really like how like Lucas, is a true crime writer, and this is kind of, he's on like a downward slope, and this is going to be like his last chance at redemption. But thinking about it like that, I would think as an author myself that I would put my heart and soul into it, and it felt like he was just starting to give up like so easily, and that really annoyed me.
Yeah, he was not someone I really rooted for. He kind of all the characters kind of fell into like the horror movie character tropes where they have to make these dumb decisions that I don't understand in order for a plot to happen.
Yeah.
So at a certain point when you read enough horror and stuff, we're just like, okay, you do that dumb thing. I want to see some ghosts.
Yeah. What did you think of this whole like I thought it was interesting how we read Elizabeth Frankenstein, and there was like all these like different flashbacks going back and forth between the storyline, and then within these walls was again like with the flashbacks. But then it was just talking about like the backstory and stuff that was going on with Audra Snow and Jeffrey and their whole crew. So what did you think about like the story being written in that way?
I thought it was a cool idea to give you insight into, that wasn't directly from, what's his name? Jeff? The killer's perspective. Yeah. But from someone in his inner circle who was actively being manipulated by him. And I don't know, I was hoping to connect with her more, but I just kind of felt bad for her, and I felt she was kind of stupid too. But
as I said, I think everyone in this book was kind of dumb except for the killer.
Yeah.
Like he was like mega smart, but
yeah, of course. But it was a cool way of filling in the blanks in the backstory that otherwise it was important to know, and it gave you a little bit of sympathy sort of initially for the people in his circle and stuff. So yeah, there was that. It just gave you a little more insight, I guess.
Yeah, it did kind of take a turn, like with that first flashback or whatever back. I started realizing, oh, so this is like the direction that was going in, because obviously in the beginning of the book, he receives this letter from him, and then he moves his
family
out to where is it? Washington.
Somewhere here.
Yeah, somewhere there, and I lost my train of thought. Oh my gosh, I literally lost my train of thought. This happens to me all the time. I'm sorry. You go.
Okay, so I thought it would have been cool if they'd done the flashbacks because they kind of dropped that, because then he stops cooperating with them. So I think it would have been cool if
that's what I was going to say. I thought
and you got the story that way.
Yeah, I thought he was going to like
little breadcrumbs, like just telling him just enough to keep him on the line or something.
And then I thought he was also going to like manipulate him, because he's like Lucas is like warned, I think, like by his like agent and like by his wife and like all these people like, don't let him manipulate you. And
Yeah.
so, and then he's just like cocky and is like, oh yeah, like he's not gonna, do anything to me. I genuinely thought like he was gonna like manipulate him in that way with his like interviews, because Lucas was just dumb. but but when he kept denying the interviews, I was like, what's happening? Like, what is this whole master plan that's happening?
Yeah, it was. He took kind of a passive role in the end. I mean.
Well, Ani says that it reminded me a lot of Kill Creek too.
It did remind me of Crypt too. That
kind of like stereotypes of like horror book characters, and they all just are doing their dumb decisions.
And actually, I read Kill Creek again this month because
really?
The time I read it before, I'm so like sleep deprived off and on that my opinions can't be trusted. So I read it again, and I read it with a different perspective, and I actually really liked it. Once I read it like from a writer's perspective and from like a horror fan perspective, I did really like it. So I felt bad that I really only said negative stuff about it before. I know I'm digressing, but
no, it's okay, because it would be interesting to reread it in a way that like Dawn had read it. She read it as a horror author herself.
Yeah, that's what
whereas I read it for the entertainment value as a reader, which is why I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Let's see. What did you think about Maggie? So she's just kind of like a little side character, but I thought that her arc was very interesting too. I thought how in the end she almost became like just as bad as Jeff, which was like really creepy.
Which one was Maggie? I'm sorry.
That was Audra Snow's best friend / neighbor or whatever.
Okay.
And then we find out later on in the book that Maggie is Echo's mother, which like still, kind of gives you, like, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Something's going on here. And then again, as you, continue on to the end, you start finding out that Maggie was like in on the master plan of Jeff to like kill Audra and like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that just like threw me for a loop when I was
I did
reading
not
all
see that one coming. How did I not remember her name?
Although I think in general the whole ending of Within These Walls threw me for a loop. I feel like some people are gonna like have mixed emotions about the ending. I really liked the ending. And this is where I'm kind of like being a hypocrite in the sense, because in The Dark Season Elizabeth Frankenstein, like I didn't like the idea of Elizabeth Frankenstein dying at the end, and then when she like lived her still, I was like relieved. But in Within These Walls, I really liked how V died. Like because like throughout the book she's kind of pictured as the smarter Grun. Like, yeah, she's still pretty dumb, but she's pictured as the smarter one of the two. And so I would think that she would live over her dad. But then Lucas lives and then doesn't.
Yeah.
What do you have like any like because it's never really like 100% clear that Jeffrey like took possession of Lucas, but it kind of gives off that vibe. Do you think he did?
I hope so, because that is an awesome ending. So I want to say yes.
Which again kind of like mirrors Kill Creek too, because of the way that the other person possesses, what was her name? Monroe?
Oh God, I can't remember.
I can't remember their names. See, I'm just bad with names, people. Liz Wallenstein says Maggie disappeared after introducing them and then came back later like she never met them. Oh, that's a good point. She did, like, she met them once or whatever in the forest with Audra. And then when Audra started getting close to them, Maggie appeared suddenly again, and she like acted like she didn't know them.
That's right. Nobody thought that was weird, right?
Yeah, I did not pick up on that, I think, initially. I think maybe it was like a passing thought. I was like, well, I think maybe in the time, because like she was more of just like surprised to see that they were living with Audra, is what I thought was her mentality at the time.
Yeah.
Which, like, now I know, like, she was in on it the whole time. Although, oh wait, yeah, so she was in on it the whole time, right? So she knew Jeffrey back when when he went to the original church, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So do you think, like, theory, it's time, do you think that Maggie kind of shaped Audra beforehand
Yeah, I
to
think so,
fit into that
actually.
role?
Yeah, I think she was probably like whispering in her ear the whole time, you know? Preparing.
Let's see.
That's what I would picture in that scenario, too, you know? Maybe it's because I've read things like that before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay, I have a cool question here. If Jeff had taken the interview or any of the interviews with Lucas, like, what do you think that interaction would have been like?
Oh God, I picture it sort of like the initial interactions between Hannibal Lecter and Clarice in Silence of the Lambs. You know, where it's like he knows he has all the power, but she's kind of cocky. I picture it being a similar dynamic where he holds all the cards and he knows that Lucas is super desperate, and so he can just feed him what he wants in order to manipulate him and kind of keep him on the line, which I really thought was what was going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I thought he was gonna manipulate, Lucas, especially after everyone warned him, like,
Yeah.
oh, don't let him manipulate you, and then
But I
he
guess he
didn't
didn't
even
need
do
to.
that. I guess so. Instead, his grand plan was to manipulate B, which goes into another thought that I had, was that, and I think it's kind of semi-touched on in the book, where Lucas starts realizing the whole like role that V is playing in Jeffrey's plan, and he starts going, well, how would he know about her? Because in his bios or whatever on like his author pages, I think he says that he never talks about his family because his wife didn't want like stalkers or whatever. So like how did Jeffrey know about V, A, and B, how would he know that V was in that state of mind similar to Audra, and that she would fall for like his charm?
That's a good question. I wonder, it makes me wonder how many connections Jeffrey must have had on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who knows? He might have had people in the circle of like several different real crime authors, you know, just keeping an eye on them. And I don't know.
Another thing I had was that like V's friends were in on it, because at the beginning V is really connected with her friends, with Tim, and then I forgot what the other girl names was, like Heidi, right, something like that. And at first Heidi's like kind of playing in on V's thoughts and emotions during the first part of the book, and then as she starts like declining and all of these like crazy theories, Heidi just like stops talking to her almost. So I kind of like had gotten the feeling that maybe like Heidi was hiding something.
That would be creepy.
Melania says, did I miss what happened with the baby? Help me with that. Oh, that's right. The baby with Audrey's baby.
Audra, yeah.
Yeah. So she was pregnant with Jeff's baby, and then I think from what I understood, the whole ending part was very like convoluted, and there were a lot of different like there was like the convergence of all the backstory, plot lines, and then the present time, and then the like way backstory plot lines when like Jeff, like before Jeff was a thing, and so that whole ending part was like very convoluted. So I probably missed on a lot of things. But from what I could understand, it was that Jeff was kind of like that prophet figure, and he had the prophecy of that this baby would be born out of him and someone of his circle. And so when it was Audra, I wasn't super clear on whether we think that Maggie had shaped Audra to become that kind of mother of Jeff's baby, or if it just happened that Audra was the only one that got pregnant. So I'm kind of curious about that.
I feel like it was the former because she was the one we were following, so I felt like she was important like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, she was important in that way that she never truly bought into the whole idea of everything. She still kind of took it with a grain of salt. Jessica says they referred to the baby as the child. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I skimmed over.
Said the whole baby thing was very convoluted.
I skimmed over the baby parts because I'm a new mom, so I don't want to read it's like when there's a dog in a horror movie, you're just like, no, that dog better live,
Yeah.
So I just skimmed over those parts, and especially since there was so much else going on, I just focused on that. I don't even remember, and I should have waited to read it.
I did notice that there were a lot of biblical references that kind of connected Jeff into this kind of biblical persona. So I think a theory, one of my theories with this whole child thing, was that the baby born out of Audra and Jeffrey, Audra is almost like Mary, and Jeffrey is almost like God or the Holy Spirit, that kind of prophet base. So I'm thinking that the child is in Jeff's belief, was the savior, the Jesus Christ, but that in order to fulfill a greater purpose, Jeff would have to kill that baby in order for it to essentially be the sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So the child ended up being kind of that mirrored of the Jesus, sacrificing himself to save others. And so that's what Jeff was thinking with the child, was that this child would need to die in order to save everyone else.
That's what I was worried about.
Let's see, Jessica said on page 351. Let me see. I'm just looking. Oh, here we go. Interesting. So on page 351, Jessica pointed out that, I don't know, on ebook it might be different for you. Jessica pointed out that they say the child, you quote the child, but it's capitalized, capital T, and then capital C, child. So it is this kind of prophecy figure. Yeah. Jessica says it just seemed to highlight the religious views and biblical references. Yeah, exactly. Kind of like what I was saying. Yeah, it is very much that is pretty much definition of a cult.
Yeah,
is that religious play on everything. But yeah, it was interesting little connections that they were making. I think I had a couple of other quotes here that I had found. Let me find them real quickly. So on page, I noted some of the notable religious references when I first started reading it, and then as I was reading it, I got so entranced in it that I didn't take note of all of the references after this. But on page 37, there's a religious reference where he says, "I love them as much as they've as much as if they'd come from my own rib. So like, again, like he's kind of picturing himself as like that Adam figure, you know, the of that biblical reference. And then again on page 65, Jeff says, or no, who says this? I don't remember who says this, but it's the quote says, he was like Adam looking for his Eve. So again, it's like kind of like playing on that Jeffrey is like this like godlike Adam figure, and that he was looking for his Eve, and that Eve ends up being Audra Snow. Any other thoughts?
What did you think about like just the prose, like her writing style? Because I
really enjoyed it. I liked it because I mean, this I think would be construed as technically an adult book. Like, yeah, it has a 12-year-old girl in it. But technically I would think this would be considered an adult book, but it didn't read like it. It was like very like quick paced, and it wasn't heavy in a sense, like a lot of adult books are. So I was able to like, you know, buy into it pretty quickly, and connect with the storyline a lot better than if it had been more dense. So I really liked it, and I really liked the kind of differing formats. It kind of was reminiscent of like all of Dawn's books, which is why like I think like Dawn would really enjoy this, because it's like has that kind of like mixed formatting type of style.
Police reports and stuff.
Yeah, so it had like the police reports, and then the ghost reports I thought was really interesting too.
Oh, yeah.
How they like included a couple of those where, you know, these ghost reporters went out to investigate and then kept finding no evidence of anything.
Yeah. No, I really liked it.
Yeah. What do you think about, speaking of like the ghost reports and everything? So, do you think, again, like this is kind of going into theories, do you think that Jeffrey like had tried this plan before with other families? Because other people had lived in that house before Lucas and V did, and they had also been getting the hauntings or whatever from like these ghosts, and like seeing visions and seeing like the furniture stacked weirdly and like all this stuff. So like it makes me curious, like were they trying to do that different times too, like with these past families, and they just like didn't succeed in the end?
That's a good question, because it seemed like because of the ghost stuff, it seemed like they only really revealed anything like purposely to people that they chose, you know? Mm-hmm. So maybe he tried and failed and just happened to succeed on this one. I don't know. There's so many unanswered questions with this one, like with Kill Creek, that like makes it so tantalizing. Like I kind of wish it was more expanded upon, but then I guess I wouldn't be able to muse on it so much.
Yeah.
I like the questions, because everything's still such a mystery, even now that I've finished it, you know? Mm-hmm. There's so much we don't know. I like it.
Oh, I just had a favorite quote there. Okay, well, did we talk about everything that we want to talk about? What else is there? Guys, in the comments, in the chats, do you have any like specific questions that we didn't cover yet? Let's see. Lonnie says, I liked how it was laid out and it helped move the story along. Yes, very true. Jessica says, I thought he tried with other families and just assumed he failed. Okay, so she you know thought about that theory too. Do you think that, like, again, obviously this is all like theories, like, do you think that this was successful because of just the aspect of Lucas's like desperation for this work? Because I think like V was kind of her own person too. So do you think it still would have played out in that if Lucas had decided to give up after all and like pack up and go home, would V have like forced him to like stay? Because there is a scene where she like says like, no, it's okay, like I don't want to, you know, live with Mark and and stuff. So do you think that if Lucas had given up, V would have still just been that like stubborn person to be like, no, we're staying here?
Oh, I think so, because look at her personality. She's very like defiant the whole book. So I think if she wanted to stay, then absolutely she would say that.
And then again, it plays into like who was shaping her, like back home. Like
Yeah.
if like this Jeffrey's plan like finally worked with V, like why was it that he knew about her going into it? Because all he really should have known was about Lucas, and it goes into like theories of like, okay, what what are all the little intricacies that happen behind the scenes?
Yeah. I'm curious about like what the author's own backstory was in her head while writing this, because I'm sure that she has answers to all this, but it's just
Yeah, for sure.
you know?
Yeah, she likes this.
I'm so curious.
Being mysterious. Let's see. Do you have any other thoughts? Do you have like any favorite quotes? I have a favorite quote that I wanted to say.
I had some, but I didn't mark them. I didn't make any notes on this one. But I did like a lot of the like, because I live in Washington, I liked a lot of the initial descriptions and stuff. Because I was like, oh yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's not common.
I'm not from Washington, so I didn't pick up on those.
Oh yeah.
No, my favorite quote, because was kind of like mirrored, Kill Creek again, in that this was about a true crime writer, not a horror author, but a true crime author. And I really liked this particular quote. It was on page 42 for those of you like watching at home. It's this like second to last big paragraph where he says he's talking about like his career, and he's talking about how V has kind of turned into this like angsty like preteen with like wearing black and like listening to heavy metal and all these like bands and stuff. And it goes over like how he was like that when he was a kid too. And so in this last quote, it says, he had traded in the band shirts and Doc Martens for button-downs and casual Oxfords long ago, but he'd never fully outgrown the sexy, sullen pool of despondent musings. He'd simply disguised it as a career. I loved that part.
I can relate to that.
Exactly.
That is a good one. She just has a way with words. It's so like she shoves so much into so few words. It's very succinct, and I really like her writing style. I wish I could write like that.
What would you say your final rating for it was then?
I would give it. Oh man, I don't want to be like 3.5 stars, maybe 4 stars, just because the characters. I just didn't connect with the characters, and that's kind of important to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I went a little bit higher. And I think my initial was just 4 stars. And it was because it kind of developed slightly slowly. Maybe I think probably around like page 100 or like 80 or so is when I started really like getting into it, which is still like too long for me with a book. Like it has to hook me from like at least the first couple of pages, if not page 1.
Yeah.
But I did like really enjoy like the style of everything, and how it was these multiple formats. And again, as with you, I didn't connect to the characters. I think I kind of connected with V, but I think that was more of just like me forcing myself to try to connect with somebody. Of all of them, V would probably be the one that I would connect with the most.
Yeah.
Jessica had a quote here on page 57. I really like the quote. There are no such things as haunted places, only haunted people.
Oh, that was a good one.
I really like that one.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it did basically end up being like that, where they were essentially just having like a bunch of like hallucinations almost, like where they weren't really necessarily seeing ghosts, but they were seeing this like change in environment and change in settings. And it was almost like they were hallucinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good one.
So they did indeed kind of become like the haunted people.
Which is so cool. It's so cool. I love that it ended up being so supernatural like that. And it's not like a, regular mass murder, I guess. How boring.
Yeah. How boring. Killing, a bunch of people. It gave me, I'm surprised it didn't like really like turn into a whole lot of like, it didn't give any like subtle hints towards this. But I was thinking it in my mind was the whole what was it? The Roanoke colony or something like that? Or I'm totally blanking. Basically that cult where I think, I don't know, like 20 years ago, something like that. Or the whole like aspect of don't drink the Kool-Aid term slang kind of came around where they like drank, they all had like a mass suicide essentially where they drank poison. Okay, so it is Roanoke colony. That's what I was like thinking. I couldn't remember if that was the name of the place or not. But that was what was connecting in my mind. And I'm kind of surprised that none of the characters like made any kind of, jokes or anything like that towards it. I would have liked to have seen some sort of like what?
I was thinking of like Heaven's Gate, like the drink the Kool-Aid dude. That cult, it was Heaven's Gate, right?
Was it not Roanoke? I'm like so blanking.
Like way back, like long before Kool-Aid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But basically, yeah, that like that kind of cult suicide thing.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen like any kind of like subtle reference to that.
I wonder if that was just not supposed to have happened in this universe,
Yeah, I guess so. Like this is our version of that. Like what happened there.
Yes, that was the Waco one, I think. Yeah. Jim Jones.
Okay, yeah.
That dude. Boring. There was no ghost there.
Or was there? We don't know.
Maybe
they're all dead. Okay. Yeah. So does anybody else have any like final thoughts in the chat? What were you guys rankings? I had blanked on the word. So I gave it like 4 stars. Marie's 3.5 stars. I think actually talking about it, it could probably go up to like maybe a 4.5.
Yeah.
But in the end, it didn't hook me with the characters, I would say. But the plot in itself was like super intriguing, and I love the ending. For those of you who missed that first part or whatever, I like loved how like the main characters died.
It was a ballsy.
It was. And then the whole like mysterious happenings of Lucas, like being essentially possessed by Jeffrey.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome.
Jessica says 4 out of 5 for me. Cults and ghosts are wins in my book. Nice. All right. Well, I think that is gonna wrap up our chat then for Within These Walls. Thank you guys so much for joining in on the chat. So we talked about The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White earlier, and then we talked about Within These Walls by Ania Ahlborn. And it was a lot of fun, and I definitely got on some new like perspectives and stuff for both of these books, which was always so cool to have. But in the next month, we're going to be reading The Woman in the Dark. So definitely pick up that book with us and join in, and we'll be doing a live chat on that book at the end of May. Any final words, Marie?
No, I'm just looking forward to next month. This is actually super fun, having an excuse to read new books that I probably wouldn't have picked up otherwise.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, I really like how we kind of tend to pick up on the books that are like the lesser known works that
Yep.
like aren't as mainstream. Because like all you really see out there are the mainstream ones.
Mhm. Yeah, this is fun.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining in, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.